Hello everyone, hope everyone is doing well. Today we're going to talk about perfect competition and we're going to look at firms that operate in a perfectly competitive market. So, some of the things that are consistent across those firms in a competitive market. So, what is a competitive market? In From now on in the next few lectures, we're going to look at the structure of markets. So if we draw, let's say, the markets as a continuum like this, then in one end we have perfectly competitive markets. So these have many firms and they sell similar products. Now on the other spectrum, end of the spectrum, we have monopoly. It's basically one firm selling one product, or it could be many product, but let's just say one product. Okay. So it's basically difference between perfectly competitive and monopoly. Think about like maybe farmers selling tomatoes, and monopoly would be, let's say, electric. In the middle, like when we look at all these other firms, so these are what we would call monopolistically competitive market. And they also have many firms, but they try to sell, I will put in quotes, unique products. And then in this area, we have what we would call oligopoly, where you just have maybe 3 to 4 or maybe 5 firms operating in the whole market. And they sell also somewhat of a unique product. So this is what the spectrum looks like of the different types of market. So we are going to look at perfectly competitive market right now. All right. So what are some of the qualities of a perfectly competitive market? So we use an example of, let's say, farmers selling tomatoes. So in this case, one example is there are many buyers and sellers in the market. One buyer or seller is too small to affect the market price. So we may have, if one buyer wants to buy the product at a lower price, they cannot do it because there's just one buyer. And if the seller does not sell it to that buyer, there are many other buyers left over to buy the product. So we call this price taker. That is, the buyers and sellers are both price takers. They take the price as given and then they decide whether to buy the product or not. The product that they're selling is very similar, if not identical. So if I look at tomatoes by farmer John is very similar to tomatoes by farmer Chris. So the products are not different, they're very similar, and they basically sell in the market which has numerous other sellers and other buyers. So, what are some other examples? So, yes, definitely tomatoes is one. Other agriculture produce are the same. But also, if you think about some other products, maybe with more standardization and stuff, if you think about, let's say, um, photographers in a big city. So, there are many photographers who can take pictures of weddings or birthdays or engagements and all those other events. So there are many sellers and buyers, and they all have very similar product that they offer, taking pictures. And then of course, the products are pretty much the same. If they have the same experience and stuff, then they are pretty much. So before we move into firms in a competitive market, we have to see, like, okay, they also, just like in any firm, their main aim is to maximize profits. And we talked about what profit is. Profit is basically going to be equal to revenue minus costs. Now, what cost is this? Explicit cost or implicit cost? Well, in our case, we are going to consider to be, instead of looking at just profit, we will talk about economic profit. And it makes it easier. So basically what we are doing is we are trying to maximize our economic profit. So it's going to be revenue minus my explicit cost minus my implicit cost. Okay, so how do we determine the profit of a small firm that is operating in a perfectly competitive market? So first of all, before we go into the definition of all that, we have to look into another mathematical relationship or a formula, and we will call this marginal revenue. Marginal revenue is basically going to be the additional revenue that a firm can earn if they sell one more item. So in a perfectly competitive market, we said that the seller is a price taker. So they take the price offered in the market as given and then decide whether to sell in that market. So what we will do here, let's look at a table and we will try to understand how to calculate marginal revenue. Actually, let's look at the formula first. So marginal revenue is going to be equal to change in total revenue divided by change in quantity. So if I wanted to write it in fancier form, I would say delta total revenue divided by delta Q. So now let's look at a table to see, or an example to see how this works. So let's say I'm selling the same product. Okay, so my price, quantity, total revenue, and marginal revenue. So in this case, we make it bigger. So let's say if I sell, now as we said, the seller is a price taker. So in my case, as a small firm, I just look at the price that is offered in the market and then I decide how much to sell. So if the price is basically going to be, let's say the same. So let's say it's going to be $5. Now at $5, I can sell 10 units, I can sell 15 units, I can sell 20 units, 25, or 30 units. So my total revenue is going to be price times quantity, which is going to be 5 times 10, which equals to 50. 5 times 15, 5 times 20, 5 times 25, and 5 times 30. So these are these are the values of total revenue. So marginal revenue, as we said, is change in total revenue divided by change in quantity. So which means that I'm going from 50 to 75, and then I'm dividing it by the increase in quantity, which goes from 10 to 15. So in the first one, I don't have any value. In the second one, my change in total revenue, I'm going from 75 minus 50. That's my increase in total revenue, or change in my total revenue, divided by the change in quantity, which is 15 minus 10, which comes up to be 5. And then I do the same thing here, 100 minus 75 divided by 20 minus 15, which equals to 5 again. Same thing here, 125 minus 100 divided by 25 minus 20, which gives me 5. And then 150 minus 125 divided by 30 minus 25, which also comes up to be 5. So my marginal revenue is going to be 5. Now, in this case, if you look at a thing here, it's my price and my marginal revenue values are exactly the same. So in a perfectly competitive market, the price equals marginal revenue. Market price equals marginal revenue. Now, when we look at monopoly and monopolistic competition, this will not be the case. But in our case right here, price equals marginal revenue. So if you ever have a question that shows price equals marginal revenue and it asks you what kind of market is this firm operating in, you would probably say that it is a perfectly competitive market. So now from here, first of all, okay, so we calculated marginal revenue and now we have to figure out, why do we need marginal revenue? So why do we need to calculate marginal revenue? So in this case, why it's needed, to get that, let us just review one thing that we talked about in our cost section. If you have kind of forgotten about cost, please go back and check my video on cost. So we talked about something called marginal cost. Marginal cost is the increase in cost when I produce one additional output. So if I produce, let's say, let's look at some numbers here. So let's say I have quantity here, and let's say I just have my marginal revenue and marginal, and produce more is yes or no. So in this case, let's say I produced 100 units, and now I'm thinking about, should I produce one more? So if I produce one more unit, let's say my marginal revenue is 7, but my marginal cost is 3. So in this case, if I make that 101st unit of output, I actually will earn $7 when I make that sale, but it will only cost me $3 to produce that product. So then I can see that if I produce the 101st output, I will make 7 minus 3, which equals to $4 of profit from that output. So I should produce the 101st output. Okay. Now let's say I am producing at 120 units. Let's say my marginal revenue still remains at 7. My marginal cost now goes up to 5. And if you remember, we looked at my marginal cost curve before, and it is upward sloping. So in that case, I still make 7 minus 5, which is equal to $2 of profit from producing 121st product. So I should produce more. Now let's say I go up to 140 units, and now my marginal revenue is 7, but my marginal cost has gone up to 9. In this case, if I add one more unit of production, I see that I earn 7, but it's costing me $9 to produce it. So, well, if I produce 141st unit, then my profit is 7 minus 9, which equals to -2. So I'm actually losing money. I earned less than the cost of production. So I should not produce that unit. So that means that if marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, I keep on producing more. If marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, I should cut down on my production. So where should I stop? So basically, I should stop where my output, I should produce at a point of my output where my marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So let me write this here. I should produce at a point where my marginal revenue equal marginal cost to maximize profit. Okay, so let's look at this graphically, and let's try to figure out how I could calculate my marginal revenue and marginal cost. So as we saw, in our case, we have we need to draw our demand and supply curve here. So this will be price, or in dollars, and this is quantity. Okay, now we said that marginal revenue is the same all units of output. So let's say my marginal revenue here is at that level. So this is going to be my marginal revenue curve. Now my marginal cost, as I said, I need my marginal cost. So let's say this is my marginal cost. Now, if I look at my values at this point, let's say at this quantity, my marginal cost is down here, but my marginal revenue is up here. So at this point, I can see marginal revenue is actually greater than marginal cost. So I should continue production. I should go. If I'm producing at this point, Q prime, at this point, I can see that my marginal revenue is down here, but my marginal cost is way up here. So I can see that at this point, my marginal revenue is less than marginal cost. So I should produce less. So that means my best point for production, where I should be able to maximize profit or minimize my losses, is at this point where, at this point, marginal revenue equal marginal cost. Now, how do I find the profit maximizing level of output? So let's look at this curve again, and let us add another curve that we will need. So we have price here and we have quantity. Let's say this is my marginal revenue. This is marginal cost. And we have another curve that we have to add, which is going to be average total cost. Okay. Now, what are the steps of finding my profit maximizing level of output, price, and what is my profit? So let's look at this value. So let's say, so there are a few steps to find the profit. So the first step is find the point where MR equals MC. So I need to find the point where my marginal revenue equals my marginal cost. So that is what I would do here. I would go to this point and I would say if this is my MR, this is my MC, this is the point where my marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So let's say my quantity here is 200 and the price here is, let's say 20. My next step is find P, let's say P star and Q star at point where MR equals MC. So I found those 2 points. So Q star is 200, P star is 20. So I will write that here. Let's say P star equal 20, Q star equal 200. Now I will find the point in ATC where Q equals 200. So now at this point, this is my point where I will maximize the profit or minimize the loss. This is what it costs me to produce that per unit. So ATC, as we said, it will tell me how much has it cost to produce from the 0 to 200th unit. What is the cost per unit of all those items that I've produced? Marginal cost, as we said, it's telling me what is it going to cost me if I produced one additional unit. So let's say this value is going to be 15. So I find ATC star equals 15. Then my profit is going to be P minus ATC times. So if I wanted to calculate my profit, it's going to be the price, which is 20, minus 15 times 200 equals, it will be $1,000. Graphically, it would be this region. Now let's say I want to find, this is where we had profit. What about if we have losses? So let's start again. We have, let's say this is my marginal revenue. This is going to be marginal cost. But now let's say my ATC is way up here. So we do the first step, find the point where MR equals MC. MR equals MC is, let's say, still at 200. Price and quantity are at 20 and 200 respectively. The point in ATC, let's say it's up here, which is going to be, let's say 30. So we find my ATC is 30. So then my profit is going to be, or here, it's going to be loss, which is negative $2,000. So I'm losing this value, which is my loss over time. All right. So since we take the market price as given, we have this relationship between price and our ability to earn profit. So if my costs are really high, then I'll be earning, actually, I could be earning losses. Now with this, we come to the other point, which is entry and exit. So another factor that we talked about, so we said these are the qualities of a competitive market. There are many buyers. They're too small to affect the market price. The product they're selling is very similar. Another one that we should also include is it is very easy for a person, or for, let's say a person to enter or leave the market. So both buyers and sellers are not tied to the market. If the seller cannot sell enough, they will just leave. So now that we go back here, looked at profit, let's say, or we first looked at profit. Now, if there is profit, let's say I see that my neighbor is in this business, is a photographer, is earning a lot of money. Then I can be like, well, it doesn't really take much to be a photographer. I can take a few courses. I can buy a camera and I can start taking pictures. Now, whether I'm a good photographer or not, that's different, but at least I can start photography. So if existing firms are earning profits, others can see that, and others may be interested in entering the market. So if existing firms are earning profits and I see people that this is a great thing to do, I want to also join in and earn profits, then others may be entering the market. Now, if existing firms are earning losses, then firms after a while may leave the market, and so the number of sellers may decline. And so with this, then where is the equilibrium then? The equilibrium then is if you have profits, more firms are coming in. If you have losses, firms are leaving. So then this entry and exit can stop when profits equal 0. So that means there are no more economic profits to be earned. What that means is that then this curve, ATC curve, will actually be, if I draw it, then my ATC will be eventually down here. So at this point, price equals ATC. So then as you can see, then P minus ATC times Q, this will be equal to 0. So I will earn 0 economic profit. Now, this can lead to us thinking, okay, how does what happens? How is this possible? Like a firm can earn profits or losses over time, and they cannot manipulate the price, so they take the price as given. How is that possible? So let's look at two graphs here, and we can try to see how this can affect us, or how the firms are influenced by prices. So let's look at two graphs. This is going to be the market, the one on the left, and this is going to be the individual firm, or one of the individual firms. So this, in the market, we have hundreds, thousands, or even millions of buyers and sellers. Let's write price and quantity, and we also have price and quantity here. And so this is my demand curve, and this is my supply curve. So in the market, the interaction of demand and supply of all the firms, that sets the price. The price is set at, let's say, $10. And let's say 10,000 units are being bought and sold. Okay, now just to make it easier, let's say there are 100 firms. So each firm is providing 100 units. Now, as we said, the firms and the buyers and sellers are both price takers. They take this price as given, and so they basically take this price to be given at 10, and this will be their marginal revenue. And so this is their marginal cost. Let's say this is their average total cost. So as we said then, they will figure out, okay, this is the point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So this is the quantity I should produce. Let's say it's at 100. My ATC at this point is going to be 5. So I'm earning a profit of $500. So let me write pi here is 500, which is, pi means profit in economics. So in this case, now, as we said, other firms may see that, hey, look, there is a lot of profit to be earned. So as we said that, there is really little barriers to entry in this market, so other firms may be interested in entering the market. So when we said a number of sellers is a factor that affects price, this is back when we talked about supply and demand. So then supply shifts to the right to S prime. And so what happens is, as we see, market price falls to, let's say, $5. If it falls to $5, now my marginal revenue price falls to $5, so my marginal revenue is also going to be at $5. So now there's probably more firms coming in, and if this is the case, as I can see that my quantity fell and I'm producing less, let's say I'm producing 80, my cost fell, or sorry, my price fell, ATC is also at 5, so then I'm now earning my profit equals 0. What if it overshoots and there's a lot more firms coming in? Let's say we actually had, instead of 5, price falling to 5, let's say price fell to maybe $3. So price now fell to $3. So in that case, if price fell to $3, I will see that I take that price as given, and this is now my new marginal revenue curve. This is at $3. So I see that this is the point where I should maximize profit, but at this point, my ATC is higher than the price. So ATC is greater than price. So in this case, I'll be earning losses. So when there's losses, and then supply will shift to the left because there's, some firms may think it is unprofitable, and so they'll leave the market. And then finally, we may reach the equilibrium where at $5, where ATC equals my price, and this is where I will continue production. So this is from the firm side, interact, because if they earn more profits, firms will enter, lowering your profit. So your economic profit eventually will be equal to 0. This is where the equilibrium is. But this is not a static concept. Of course, things may happen, demand can increase. So what if demand goes up to D prime? At that point, if we have too many supply curves here, let me erase some of them. This is the current supply curve that I have. So my demand curve moved from D to D prime. This is my supply curve. With this, price just went up to, let's say, $15. Now I have a lot more. Now my marginal revenue is way up here. These are no longer my marginal revenue curves, so I'm going to erase all these, and I will redraw my ATC and MC curves. So now I can see that this point is going to be point where pi is maximized. So then I start, if it's $15, my average variable cost is somewhere like at 8. Then this is the profit I earn. And I also produce more. I probably produce 120 units. And then again, the whole process starts again. Again, supply increases, and then it will keep on increasing until this falls down to 0. Or my profit falls down to 0. So this is the relationship between the market and the individual firm. The individual firm, the interaction of all the buyers and sellers in the market, sets the price. And that price is taken by the firm as given, and then they decide how much do they want to purchase, or how much do they want to produce. And based on that, they see how much profits and losses they earn. But, there's easy entry and exit because people can see how much profits they earn. So if more profits are being earned, more firms will enter, lowering the profit to 0. If firms are already earning losses, then firms will leave the market, increasing the profit back to 0. Hopefully this was beneficial, and I will meet you at a later lecture. Have a good day, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.